So now the whole topic is Yoga Shastra, and in that topic is that one needs to have a relative freedom and a relative kind of objectivity in one's transaction with the world before this knowledge can take place, right? So now imagine that what Shastra is telling you, that you are the limitless, right? Let's say, and you kind of feel that you do understand when the teacher explains how it is so. But imagine that there is a certain thought pattern in your mind where you feel there is this whole pattern and your orientation where you feel that you are, let's say, insecure, right? So now, how there are two different kinds of thoughts which are coexisting in your mind. One is certain vague understanding of the fact that you are limitless, and the second orientation is what? You're insecure. And now after the class you have to transact with the world, right? Which of the two is going to guide your behavior?
The old pattern.
Absolutely, right? So 1 year of 1 hour of Vedanta has no strength compared to this pattern of thinking that I'm insecure is something which then every situation, whether it is your relationship with your spouse, or your kids, or with money, anything it is, a guiding thing is I'm insecure. Right? And for that insecurity, you attribute it to what? The trigger points are exactly, the trigger points are always external. Right? So whether it is your relationship with money, or it is your relationship with your own kids, or it is the whole picture in any situation, what comes, there is an event and then there is an interpretation of that event. So in that interpretation there is always what? A position of insecurity. Now, so that means there is almost like a coexisting thing. One is this so-called knowledge which then seems like useless. The knowledge seems useless because the strength of that orientation is so overwhelmingly large, and every situation is seen from that orientation, and what you go back into thinking and responding in that way. So now what will happen? No matter how much you study Vedanta, this reality to your own thought patterns is something which is not going to go away overnight. And even it's not going to go away after 25 years if you don't recognize this pattern and consciously break this pattern. Every time you find yourself getting back into that pattern of thinking, you have to remind yourself that a external situation is a trigger. It is my addition which is making me so overwhelmed by this situation, and my incapacity to handle it appropriately. So now I have to rewrite the story. That rewriting the story is the only way to get out of the old patterns of thinking. First, recognizing that this is my story and I'm so connected, and this is the whole, it's a story, it has become an orientation. And I can't get out of this orientation because there are situations, and I always create a story around those situations which fit into what the vision of the world that I have created for myself. And there you need to re-look at what has happened, and re-look at which are the facts and which are your own additions, which are your assumptions, which are your conclusions, which may or may not be true. And unless you do that, I tell you, it is just not, you can't get out of that. So therefore, this Yoga Shastra part is so important, because without this Yoga Shastra, Brahma Vidya will remain just a superficial thing. That is your personal initiative for your own growth. Okay, so for that initiative there are different frameworks which are given. Okay, because it's such a vast thing that your orientation, your thought patterns, your stories, and they're so well entrenched that different frameworks are given which help you to get out of that. Okay, so the first framework which we talked about is Karma Yoga. The starting point of that Karma Yoga is you first distinguish in any situation between what you have a choice over and what you don't have a choice over. Because in your mind, when you're trying to solve a problem, and if you keep brooding over something that you have no choice over, how is it going to help you to solve the situation? Is it going to help you at all?
So what is within your control and what is not?
Yeah, that is the first thing that you need to figure out in any decision making. And this is something that you have to remind yourself when you go out. When you go out now, and in any decision that you have to make, you have to be able to distinguish between what you have a choice over and what you don't have a choice over. So imagine in a situation that you have, let's say one relationship bothers you, right? In that relationship, what do you have a choice over and what you don't have a choice over?
Stay in it or not?
That's your choice. Exactly. These are all choices that you have, right? How you're going to respond to this person is your choice. Whether you are going to stay in this situation or not is your choice, right? Now, do you have a choice over what that person does? You don't. If you don't have a choice over what that person does in a short term, in long run the person may change because of your change, but in the short run you have no choice. Now imagine in your mind you keep brooding over that person and that person's behavior and what it does to you, and you keep on playing the tape of that. What are you doing?
You're perpetuating that.
You are reinforcing your story. You are not using your free will where you have a choice appropriately, and you continue to attribute that whole thing on the other person, and even if it is true, what you actually don't have control over. So much of your mental time is preoccupied by what? Going over and over and over and over again.
Perhaps
adding exactly to something over which you have no control. So much of our life is lived like that, and that's why we find what we get caught. We don't know how to get out because we don't know how to help ourselves. Okay, so therefore this Karma Yoga is starting by recognizing what is something which I can do in this situation at this given point in time, and doing what needs to be done. That gives you what? It breaks this whole pattern of what? Feeling helpless and feeling victimized. Once you get over that pattern, then the mental space that you have is freed up to think about what you have actually a choice over and what you can do differently. That's when you actually begin to use the power that is there within you to help yourself. So therefore, that using of free will and using it where you have a choice, right, is something which is what we call intelligent living. Okay? Now, that choice has again to be guided by certain criteria. The choice that you have has to be guided by certain criteria. So we had a big discussion about what is the criteria. So the first criteria we saw is Samanya Dharma. Samanya Dharma is the universal ethical values. Right? Now that what we saw is, it's a very important point that there is this law and there is a connect, your mind intuitively recognizes the fact that there is the law. Okay, so that means the whole thing is to align to these laws. So in addition to this Samanya Dharma, we also saw a nuance, and the nuance is, even if the laws are universal, okay, they are subject to interpretation. Okay, so we talked about the situation in which at times it requires interpretation. Okay, now we also saw within this criteria for decision making the second criteria, which is what? Swadharma. Swadharma is, in addition to this Samanya Dharma, you have what? Certain duties and responsibilities which are unique to you depending upon the position that you have in grand scheme of things. So yes, last time I talked about ashrama dharma, and Nandita, she's sharp listener, so she also asked me what is this varnashrama, because I explained varnashrama, right? So ashrama I explained by saying that different stages of life you have different roles to play, and I talked about in grahastha life how you have many different roles to play, and in those roles there are scripts. Okay, and what are the problems in this role playing? There are several problems we saw. One is we lose the cognitive distance between I and the role, and that gives us what? Total non-clarity about the situation, because we load ourselves with the problems of the role that we face. Okay, now there is a second thing which we do, and that is what? Spillover of the roles. So that means I'm a CEO, and when I'm playing a role of a CEO, there are certain duties that go along with that role. Okay, but when I come home and I start playing CEO, then I'm what? Spilling over the roles, which are what? Going to create a confusion. Okay, now the third thing we saw is that there are at times genuine conflict between the roles. So we saw, for example, Gandhiji, okay, how his role as a father had different kind of a script than his role as a national leader. And sometimes it was, and I think Nandita gave an example of, you have to be in one meeting for one reason and the other meeting for the other reason. And you always have to make choices, because you are one person and there are different roles asking for different responses, and you have to make a decision. Okay, so this is all what we saw with reference to this 50th verse, which is what? Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. When I have a choice, then how do I exercise this choice appropriately? Okay, now we go to verse 48, which then talks about responding to the results when they come to me. Okay, so I will chant the verse. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. So one thing is very important here is, even if you use the discretion to make the choices very appropriately, is there a guarantee that the result will come according to your wishes? There is no guarantee. So that means you also have to learn to deal with results which are what? Contrary to what you expect. In any given situation, you have 4 different types of result. One result, what do you think are the 4 different types of result? People are just struggling to even figure out where I am. So I'm seeing all commotion, nobody knows what's going on.
So what do you expect? What we want, what we don't want, better, less than what we want.
Excellent. More than it. Absolutely. Right? So therefore, there are 4 different types of result. Okay? The first one is equal to what you want. Then you have more than what you want. So when you have more than what you want, what do you say? You attribute it to what? Luck. You think that there is some random factor which is what giving you
you deserve it, whether it's your hard work or luck or this thing,
something that, you know, so when you so therefore there is something which is giving you more than what you need, what you had ever expected. There is something which is what less than what you expect, and then there is what opposite of what you expect. Okay, so now how do you keep samatvam? How do you keep equanimity? If I just tell you, regardless of any of these 4 results, you have to keep equanimity, is it possible?
It is possible, but realistically.
Exactly. How realistic it is. Let's examine. Because all Gita classes, the teachers, they just say, oh, have that equilibrium, and then they move on. So it becomes an advice, right? That advice is very easy to give, have an equilibrium, but how realistic is this advice? Can you say, oh, whether I have a promotion or I'm, I have just no promotion, or I'm fired, or I get like, a big job offer which is like so much more than what I was ever expecting, and I'm exactly the same. Imagine a life like that. It would be a robotic life. Okay? It would be something where what you are totally not responding to situations. You are just creating some kind of a artificial block, and you think that you are becoming what more spiritual, and you are following Gita more. Unfortunately, fortunately, Gita is far deeper than these kind of simplistic advices. Okay, as I just the Surya does this course in at his university, and he's just started doing one module, and the module is dealing with ups and downs of life. Okay, and it's such a popular module because who hasn't seen ups and downs of life? Who? And how to deal with that. Okay, so in that he gives a scenario. He starts by saying, he gives a scenario, and the scenario is that there is a father, and he has there is this person, and he lives in a village, and the person is doing some business, and now the person has decided that this business is something, there are too many uncertainties and all, so I'm going to invest in one horse, and that horse will kind of give me some income or whatever. So he sells his whole business. So the whole village, what does the village say? Wow, he's selling everything and just putting all his stake on one horse, and then what is going to happen? So they all criticize him. So he says, yeah, it's okay, let me see what happens with it. Now that horse is something, so he has it, he looks after that, and it becomes a source of income and everything. So then the villagers say, see how wise he is. So initially what did the villagers say? That he is such a fool. Then when that horse started making money, then he's so smart, he had this foresight about how to use his money. He made that right decision, and see how much money he's making. So people started really kind of looking up to him. Then one day that horse got stolen. So therefore ran away. The horse ran away. Then every villager, what did they say?
See, we said he was a fool.
Yeah. Look at him. We said he was a fool. He has no idea. He's so totally impractical. And this man says what? I don't know whether it is good or bad. Right? So the person is supposed to have what? Samatvam. Because all these people's opinions change, and you remain what? Yeah, okay, let's see what happens now. What happens next? Right?
He was confident that he had thought through his decision.
So yeah, 1 second. So now I'm going to give this exercise. Just listen to the story, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and you have to debate, right? So now Then what happened is that the horse ran away, and then all the villagers were all like, yeah, he's such a fool. Anyway, we knew that he's a fool, right? Then what happened is that horse came back with 15 other horses. So the villagers what did the villagers say?
He's so lucky.
He's so
God's chosen one.
Look at this, what luck he has, and it's amazing, what kind of, he has his jackpot, and what happened to him, and he had just done this one thing, and how much more he has now. And this man says, who knows whether it is good or bad. Then his son was riding on a horse, and the son fell. What did the villagers say?
The fellow deserved it.
You see, when you do all these kind of things, that look at his son, and he became so arrogant by having all these horses, and see, this serves him right and all. And this person, what does he say? Who knows? We'll see what happens next, right? Who knows whether it is good or bad. Then there was his village was part of a kingdom, and that kingdom went into war with another kingdom. So all the villagers, the young boys, were asked to come and help in the war. But this boy, because he was injured, he was not asked to come. Then what did the villagers say? And what did this man say? We'll see.
That's life.
That's life, right? So now that means there are two individuals. Now you see, right? The villagers have an opinion which is constantly changing depending upon the situation, right? So they just fit whatever, and this person is always, regardless of whatever happens, what is the person, what is his perspective?
Focused on what he
Let's not judge the situation. Let's not
Let's
encapsulate it.
okay. So now the question to you is this person who is not judging, is he really the wise person or not?
Yeah, because he's making his choices.
Okay.
The owner of the horse. He's
Yeah,
not judging.
the owner. Is it only the virtue?
He's not.
Well, we don't know, right?
Yeah,
we don't know because he could
He's
be
hedging his bets, right?
Yeah. He could be just saying, yeah, whatever, let it happen, or he could have been happy with his choices.
Excellent. And how he has made those choices. There are so many nuances, right? If you create this situation and you make that person into a wise person, you miss out so much. Because so much information you don't know. So therefore, we create ideals where there are no ideals. Samatvam doesn't mean that whatever comes. And imagine, like he asked these MBA guys to debate about the character of this person, and you'll be surprised how smart these MBA people are. They said, what is his life like? Whatever happens, you're not able to experience joy or downs. You are just like in some kind of an automatic mode, which is whatever going along. Do you really want to be this person? Is Gita talking about you to be that person? People don't think about things like that. Is Gita giving you this kind of, whatever happens, you just be like a robot and you just say, whatever? No. Okay? Extremely important to recognize. Where is the nuance? You tell me, where is the nuance?
See, you don't know what he's thinking. He could be saying that I made this choice, so I will deal with the ups and downs. You don't know if he's feeling sad or happy every time something sad or happy happens. Or he could have just made this decision and said, okay, now whatever, I'm just going to deal with it. So he could be in either place, and we don't know unless we're in his head.
Absolutely. How that person, first of all, where is the nuance? Tell me. When he makes the decision, has he taken the criteria? What are the criteria? What are the criteria? No, there is no criteria. Criterion and criteria. Yeah. His roles, Samanya Dharma, right? These are all the nuances.
Should he be, if he has a kid, should he be betting his whole life savings on this one horse? when he has a responsibility towards this child, who I guess at that point may have been a baby before he fell off the horse.
Right? So that means to even understand whether this is, this samatvam, this artificial samatvam is useless in life. Because the nuances are, how did he make all these choices? Were they wise choices or not? Right? Now, and how much that person is in touch with his or her emotions. Because the person can be just, feeling disappointed but saying whatever. That is what we call denial. Okay, so therefore that is this kind of a thing. So that means the person may be making inappropriate choices, not looking at his life intelligently. Also, when things happen and kind of aborting the feeling of what the real emotions which the person feels, and dealing with those emotions appropriately and making better choices. That whatever attitude is not the right attitude, and this is not what Gita is talking about. It's not asking you to be just, like whatever comes and you just, use what your faculty of choice appropriately, and whatever happens is not whatever, because imagine if you just say whatever, how much will you engage when things are not happening your way to get things happen your way? You have to work. You have to keep trying. You have to be proactive in life. You can't just say whatever. Okay? So therefore, that is extremely critical. What we are talking about is not this lose whatever attitude when we talk about samatvam. When we talk about samatvam, we talk about something which is what, when you understand that when I have used my faculty of choice appropriately and I have done whatever I can to ensure that it is used appropriately, then you understand one fact, and the fact is that I have no choice over result of the action. This is a fact. It is not, it's not an advice. When you don't accept a fact, then you are creating what? A mental picture which is not corresponding to reality. When your mental picture doesn't correspond to reality, then it brings suffering. That's why you have no choice but to align your whole thinking process with what? Realities. You have no choice. If you want to live a healthy, intelligent life, you have to align. There is no choice. So therefore, when you understand that the results I have no control over, but if you don't have control over the results, then what are the possibilities? Where do results come from? That's your next question. If I don't have control over the results, I have to ask. A thinking person will ask, if I don't have control, what controls the result of the action? What determines the result of the action?
So you may not have choice over the
result,
outcome, right? However, you have a choice to increase the probability.
Excellent.
That the outcome will be in your
Excellent. Favor. Right? You have a choice for increasing the probability. Why? Because the results are governed by what?
Other factors.
What are the factors?
Variables involved.
Yes, exactly. So what governs the result of the action?
Probability, there's circumstance,
Your
there's
hard work,
luck,
your
there's effort.
Your conscious effort comes within your free will. So that means you have used your free will. The result is coming from where?
Karma also.
Exactly. So this is where we say there is a law. There is a law which governs the result of the action. And that law is what we say law of karma. So So that law of karma, how does it operate? What does it take into account to give you the result of the action? The result, the law of karma takes into account your, as Sapna says, your effort, right? How much time you have spent, how much thinking you have done, the intentions that you have, okay, the skills that you have, the extent to which you have applied those skills, the extent to which you have thought about the repercussions of your actions on others. And also get the other variables. What are the other variables?
Chance.
The variables are not the chance, because we don't know, but from the standpoint of law of karma, what is working is what the past actions. Because in fact, it's not something which is like so unbelievable. Because if I ask you, who are you today, is it a function of just what you did this morning, or is it also a function of what you did from the time all your life? Tell me.
Yeah.
It is a function of what you did all your life. So that means there is something which connects your present to all the past things, whether you remember it or not. So that connection is what through law of karma. Because if it was in your hand, you will only pick a few causes and say, let those causes determine who I am, but the real you is only function of those choices that you like? No.
So by past actions, you mean
This life and absolutely. Right? So past up in this life you can see that connection. What law of karma does is, it doesn't put a stop to this past with reference to this 40 or 50 years. Because why doesn't it put a stop? Think about any law in this universe. How long does this law apply? What is the time period within which the laws work? Infinite. There is no law which you can say will apply only for 50 years or only for 100 years. Find me one law. Every law is what you trace it back to the creation. Okay, so why then can you make this artificial assumption that every other law starts with what? The creation, but law of karma ends when my life, which is 100 years, it ends. It doesn't. No law operates like that. So therefore, the law also takes into account all the past actions. But what makes it really complex is, like last time I showed you through this environment example, what happens? The actions of others also get factored in.
Like Indra's net.
Indra's net that we all live in. So that means your asthma today can be a function of maybe what childhood or certain attributes that you have, but it can be aggravated by what? The pollution and all that, right? So that means that pollution is not only your doing, it is doing of what? It's a collective, what we call collective karma. Right? Now everybody has to experience that collective karma, but if you're asthmatic, then what happens? You are getting a bigger brunt of that fact. So that means that law of karma, imagine the complexity of how many different factors come together to give you the result of the action. It is a function of what? Your present effort, your skills, your intentions, all that along with your own past actions, and because we live in an interconnected world, certain actions which are done by somebody else, they also affect us. So that means the complexity, if you imagine you create a computer and all these different factors have to come together to give you that given result at that given point in time. How many calculations have to be done? Infinite calculations. When you begin to understand that there is this amazing law which does this infinite calculations to give me what I get, what is going to be your attitude?
And I can only control what I do.
What is your attitude?
I do the best that I can do, and then
Absolutely. You have to do your best to increase the probability. You have to.
At least in the factors that I control, I should do my best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because in this whole situation, what is one of the very important variables is what? Your free will and how you're using that free will at present. Right? And that gets connected to all the other variables. Because there are other variables and you say, I'm not going to do what I need to do, what are you doing?
Giving up the only chance that you have.
Absolutely. You're giving up the only chance that you have to intervene intelligently. Perfect. Okay, so therefore a life is what? That when things happen which are not our way, our immediate conclusion is what? Either there are poor me. Right? So that whole, there is a mindset which is a very kind of a very that poor me, this is what we call why me. Why me? Why all these things happen to me?
Very disempowered.
It is, you feel disempowered. And you feel like you're a victim of what? Circumstances, people's behaviors. And you constantly, every time things don't happen your way, you reinforce that whole picture and you live from that. So you have to get out of this whole pattern by understanding that the only chance that I have is what? Using my free will intelligently to increase what? The probability. I can't control. Okay, so therefore this is the knowledge of how the universe works. It's nothing to do with an advice, oh don't expect, be detached to result. It's nothing to do with attachment, detachment. It is to do with facts. It is just to be lucid about how the world is and aligning your life with that and living intelligently. So the minute you understand the enormity of what? The complexity which gives you that result, you will not conclude what? That world is unfair when things don't happen according to your wishes. Your incapacity to, there is no human mind which can calculate what? All the different permutations and combinations and absolutely. So just because you don't know, it doesn't mean that what? It doesn't exist. Just because you don't know the number of people who were involved in what? Producing using some technologies which are not eco-friendly, which created pollution, does it mean that they didn't exist?
No, the veil had to be lifted.
Yeah. You don't know so many people and who do so much and which all gets what? Counted into accumulated. Just because, and nobody is capable of knowing everything. Nobody knows all the variables. Nobody. That's why our decisions are made with what? Imperfect information. Nobody has total information. even that person who actually caused so much damage to the environment may not even have recognized. A lot of it is done with ignorance, a lot of it is done with knowledge, but ignoring because I see only my short-term gain. So that means all those results have to be what experienced by that person. And the laws of karma what compensate you differently depending upon all these complexities. Okay, when you understand that, one thing that you understand is your life is what
It's your choice.
is in place. No matter how
Go down.
absolutely, no matter what you experience, it is where exactly it has to be.
You don't get what you want, you get what you deserve.
Exactly. It is where it has to be. And now you, through your free will, that's the scary part, because that is the time that you're going to what? Stop this blame game and start to use their choices. It's very easy to say this one is at, and you make all these, you become this good person and just start blaming. It's easy. Okay?
So your life is where it has to be.
Yes.
Is it where it has to be or where it is meant to be? The minute you say meant to be, it involves a little bit of a fatalistic thing, it's meant to be here. So if you can,
Yeah. So that's why I didn't use the word it has to
A lot
be.
of people tell you, oh, this was meant to be.
No, that is a very unfortunate thing. This whole thing of karma, which is so dynamic, which is what Chandana is saying, that once you recognize that there is this huge network of calculations which give you the result, you will not just, say that things are unfair, nor you will just sit back and say it is meant to be like that. I went to one class which was actually, for me, it was appalling, because the way they talk about karma, they said, oh, if somebody is mean to you, it was meant to be like that. So you encourage, because then you will finish that karma fast. So that means let them be more mean.
I was explaining this law of
What
karma.
nonsense.
They are creating more.
Yeah.
You're creating abuse karma for yourself. You're not standing up for dharma.
I was explaining this law of karma to my
This-
son, and he said, if you shout at me today, it will come back.
Back to you.
Then you better not shout because it's gonna come right back to you.
Which is true. In a way, it is true, Nandita. So you have to find a better, innovative way to talk to him. Right?
I told Vic, I was explaining to Vic the laws of karma. So he says, you better not yell at me because it'll come right back.
But the thing is that it's very, this whole, this picture, it was meant to be like this, so therefore I have some past karma, then I have to kind of let it all just, all this is not let it be exhaust. It's not like that. In fact, the more you perpetuate that pattern of behavior, what will happen? It will strengthen and it will deepen. So your job is to undo that. Undo it intelligently.
Absolutely. I was also trying to explain to
Yeah, so now tell.
Laws
Yeah.
of karma. No, this is my older
Okay,
son.
that's your older son.
It's the same age.
He
they're the
was
same
telling
class.
me,
Yeah.
why must you get into this conversation? Why can't you accept this is how it is and then do your best instead? So now
He's telling you this.
yeah, so he seems to have got that message that look, it is what it is. Why should it be past, or why should it this and that? It is what it is, and then you have to manage with what you have at that point, which is actually what this is saying.
This is what it is
You
saying.
don't know what your past karma is. You don't know what the effects of your collective karma are. You don't.
The only thing here is that either I live from the implicit understanding that the world is random, world is unfair, because many things, or I live from the understanding that there is this whole huge law which is incredible, which connects everything, and within which I have to navigate my life intelligently. right? Either I can say, yeah, I don't know what brings, or I can understand that. And that understanding of the fact, the enormity of these laws, which will make you what? Have certain natural samatvam. Samatvam, because you don't immediately, there are two responses when things don't happen our way. One is what? You blame others, and the second one is what? You blame yourself. This is immediately, if you don't have this understanding of laws, these two are inevitable. You blame yourself. There are so many human beings who suffer from low self-image. It's incredible the number of people who suffer from low self-image. They just don't have confidence in themselves, and that shows up in everything. They don't realize it. That self-worth is so low. Only when you have low self-worth, you let people abuse you. Okay? You don't even have to fight. If you have a good self-worth, you will see how people will respond to you differently.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That you don't have to fight.
You don't even have to fight.
Be mean back.
You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be this aggressive. You just have to be. But just work on making yourself strong. Strong by not this artificial, oh yeah, I'm this, no, not at all, right? Just that strength of character, aligning yourself to dharma, aligning, all these, developing all the values that Bhagavad Gita is talking about, and just see how your whole, how you change, your image of yourself changes, and how everybody else around you changes. Okay, so therefore this thing, that knowledge is something which is it's so liberating, because you don't blame yourself and you don't blame somebody else, and at the same time you're proactive where you have to be proactive. So that means this karma yoga helps you to get out of these patterns of behavior that you have, which has created your life at that given situations for time immemorial. You break out of that pattern. Otherwise it will perpetuate and it will multiply.
And sometimes it only takes this much of an old thing
to trigger, and you just get back into that mode. Okay, so therefore what karma yoga is talking about is actually quite extraordinary. Whether you recognize the implication of what all that we have seen, it's extraordinary. Getting out of these deep rooted orientations that we have, and understanding how the world works and aligning to it. Now, what is even more important, and that is that all these different unknown variables which are at work, right, which we don't even know what, even within this life you don't even know what all you had thought earlier and what decisions you made and how it is affecting you today, let alone all the past lives and everything. The enormity of all the calculations and how many variables is just too much. You feel helpless. Okay, how do you prevent yourself from feeling helpless? You have only one tool. And what is that tool? Action, which is your action. In addition to that action, you have one more tool. Knowledge is understanding where that's true. That alignment. Choice is something we've already seen. In addition to that, prayers. Prayer is one more variable you have in your hand. Okay, what is a prayer? Our teacher, I'm so happy my teacher got a Padma Bhushan yesterday. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I forgot to say.
So, he used to say, prayer is the highest expression of human free will. In order to pray, what do you need to understand? Tell me, why would you pray?
Because you are asking for help, it's your humility.
Excellent. What Saloni is saying is true, that in order to pray, you need to what? Understand the fact that you are helpless. As I told you, the variables that are at play are too many, and your capacity to control all of them is what? Not there. So therefore, helplessness is something which is what? Based on certain accurate assessment of situation. When you don't have control, and if you begin to think you are in charge, what happens? You're deluding yourself. You get arrogant. Right? But when you don't have control and you recognize that you don't have control, it can lead to what? Feeling of helplessness. When there is this feeling of helplessness, is it empowering feeling or not empowering feeling? It's not empowering. Feeling helpless is a terrible thing, but it is based on certain fact. So how this thing, which is inevitable, if you understand the world accurately, how do you convert it into the strength? That helplessness, when you convert it into what? Prayers. Then what are you doing? That you're acting on that helplessness, and what are you doing? You are, but that very law which governs the result of the action, you are adding one more variable, because prayer is an action. Prayer is an action, and like every other action which produces the result, what will prayer do? It will produce the result. It will change the outcome from what it was going to be without the prayer, because it follows what? Law of karma. Karma means action and corresponding result. Okay. Now the thing is, people, the minute you start saying that, people ask you a question, which is an interesting question. They said, imagine in a company there is one place, right? There is and 3 people have applied for promotion. There is a vacancy and 3 people have applied for this promotion, and all 3 are praying. Now there is only one position. So whose prayer will work?
The one who does action as well.
Excellent. Right? So now, implied in this question, then they say only for one person the prayer will work, for the other people prayer will not work. So this is all random. But what Saloni is saying is the result, the outcome, only function of one variable? No. It is function of multiple variables. By actually praying, what are you doing?
Improving your chances.
Absolutely. You are adding one more variable in your favor. So that means when you add one more variable in your favor, you are changing what? The outcome. Whether it will change sufficiently to give you what you want or not, you don't know, because there are so many variables at play. But at least you are using your free will to do what? Improve your probability. That is smart living. That helplessness is converted into what? Proactive. Proactive means you ask for help. You get out of this helplessness, and you what? That understanding the laws, you intelligently add one more variable to what? Increase the probability of your getting what you want.
But who are you praying for? Because we already spoke about there not being one God sitting on Mount
Yeah.
Kailash.
So what is this? See, now this is up to now. That's a very good question, Nandita. So up to now we have seen laws, right? Laws means that what? Gravity you don't pray to. Do you pray to gravity? No, because it's a mechanical law. Okay, law of dharma, law of karma. These are all ultimately what we will see is, right? They are not just mechanical laws, they are manifestation of Ishvara. So that means Ishvara will come. Okay, so therefore the prayers are never to mechanical things, prayers are always to Ishvara. And what is the nature of that Ishvara is not some person sitting out there, but that intelligence which what governs all our interactions through series of laws. So we will see in detail the nature of Ishvara in the subsequent verses of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so that's a good question, Nandita.
We did it with the Gayatri Mantra, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that means that one more variable that will change, whether it changes according to what you want it or not, but you have done your part.
They even say that be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, you have to be careful because you are really using your free will. And this is why this whole thing, never, please one thing, never ask for not well-being of somebody. Never. You know, that person has to, don't do that. Okay? You may be angry or whatever, and you can say, I'm really angry with what this person did, and that is good. But don't wish something bad for somebody else.
But you wish yourself to get out of that situation.
Yeah, you can help, you can ask for the strength to help you to get out of that situation. Don't wish some, because that has that means you're creating what? It's nothing, it's not because I'm saying it's not bad or anything. It's just that there is an action which is using your free will, deliberately making a choice, and that has a consequence. And that consequence is also for you. So it's not in your interest. It's not because it's bad. I don't want you to have that, feeling. But it works against you, and you are interested in your well-being. That's why.
So what if a child asks you, but okay, you say to pray, but what is it about the prayer, or what is it about praying that will increase, say, your probability? If we were to explain
Yes.
it in the same way that we've been talking.
Yeah. So that means it's an action. So the action is also, you can say, in fact, that's a good thing.
What's the action of prayer?
Yeah, the action of prayer is a very interesting thing. So we talk about, there are 3 types of prayers. One is what we call Vachika, Kayika and Manasa. 3 types of prayers. So one is the Kayika is any physical, that rituals that we do. These are all connecting to this intelligence. And any Vedic ritual, that you must know that it starts with Sankalpa. Sankalpa means you tell what you are looking for. This whole thing about, Ishvara knows, and why should I just pray, it's not true. You need to know what you want. So that means people say, right? So there are prayers which are for, let's say, health of some human being. So you go to a priest and you say that this is for health of this person, and he will do a sankalpa. This is for this person's health. This is for this person's emotional well-being. This is for this person to have promotion. So you actually have to say what are you looking for in life at this point in time. It's very important that you know what you're looking for, and you have to say what you're looking for. Okay? You can also have a prayer which is like Gayatri Mantra, asking for clarity. Because you can say, health, money, promotion, all comes and goes, and I still remain that dissatisfied person. So in order for me to live a meaningful life, I have to have a certain clarity. So that means your prayer can also be for clarity. Give me that lucidity to assess the situations accurately and respond properly.
That's a different type.
That's a different type of prayer.
one is
So that means you
Kayika.
can have a ritual, but the ritual, the sankalpa can be different.
Right. Right.
So that means
Gayatri mantra one. Which
Right,
prayer
right.
is that?
You said Vachika, Kaika and Manas.
all these are, what I'm saying is a ritual. These are all kaika. Okay. So you can sit where you, which kaika means that it which involves your kaya, which is body. Right, so that means this whole it's in fashion to say, oh, I'm not into rituals. Hey, rituals you may or may not like, that is your choice. I mean, you may want to do it or you may not want to do it, is your choice, but they are meant to help you. So don't say they are useless and don't look down upon them. They are just an aid. If you want it, use it. If you don't want it, don't use it. Don't criticize it. Criticism only means that you have not understood what it is and what then just dismissing it without understanding it.
And many rituals are very symbolic.
Very beautiful. They are beautiful.
So it's not
They are
just
that
some
connection. If you don't feel attracted to it, it's fine. It's not like everybody has to do it. But not invest in knowing the purpose, and without knowing the purpose, just dismiss. The dismissive attitude you have to give up. Any inquiring mind is a curious mind. Just this superficial, yeah, okay, now this I don't like. So many people make this statement, oh, I'm not at all ritualistic, but I'm spiritual, as though ritual is something very inferior, It's just meant to help you. If you want it, do it. If you don't, right? The attitudes that we have, it shows, it gives away the person. Whether the person is cultured, refined, or the person is coming from this whole position of arrogance. Okay, so therefore these kaika prayers are where you use your limbs. Vachika is where you use your speech. So therefore those speech can be these highly sophisticated Vedic prayers where you have all these intonations and it takes years to study. Or you can have bhajans, or those bhajans or any singing, choir, I don't know, they do all kinds of, every religion has some form of singing. All this is beautiful. And even within these bhajans, you can have this classical where people are so refined in their rendering. Or you can have simple people sitting and, clapping and whatever. There is a range. But these are all Gaika. The Vachika. And the third is Manasa. Mental prayer. Manasa.
Sorry?
Manasa. So,
Vachika is what?
Vachika is you use your speech.
Oh, you speech.
Yeah, your speech. So that means it's vocal. So you create sounds.
Vach means read.
No, vak means the speech. Okay, and mental prayer is, according to us, meditation is Saguna Brahma Vishaya Manasa Vyapara. Meditation is not Manasa. Mental prayer is also Dhyanam. Dhyanam is meditation. For us, Vedanta, meditation is not thoughtlessness, stopping the thoughts, or just watching your thoughts. It is a prayer, mental prayer. Prayer to whom? To that Ishvara whose nature we will see. Bhagavad Gita will talk about it, right? Connecting to this Ishvara, right? And reorienting your being at a very deep level through in the state of meditation. Extremely important to bring about that change, transformation. Very, very important. Because you are working at yourself at a very deep level and connecting and re-understanding the world and your position in it. Where then your behaviors come from that understanding and not past patterns. Okay? Manasa prayer. So these are all the prayers, these are all the tools which are available to you to what? help yourself to what? Understand what? To take different situations which come to you with a certain amount of equanimity, and then use your free will intelligently to do. First identify what you can do and then to do it appropriately. Okay, so once you know that you can use this prayer tool. Now there is another thing that people say, oh, the more you are into this Brahma Vidya, then you ask only for clarity and you don't ask for smaller things. Is it true? Do you agree with that statement or not?
That's not where you are in your life.
At a realistic level, it may not happen because your things which are happening day to day are also close to you. So you might.
Excellent.
And just because you ask for that doesn't mean you're at a lower level or.
Wonderful, Chandana. I want you to understand that, because this whole thing about the more you ask for only this, I only want clarity, but so many things are happening on your daily life, right? Somebody is not well, somebody is not doing well in school, somebody is doing, and it is of concern to you. So just because you ask for clarity, it doesn't mean that you don't ask for these lesser things. They occupy your mind. And you have this capacity to ask for whatever you want. Use it. Ask for it. At least what are you doing? You're adding your own variable. Because you can't control the entire situation. You're just doing your part. Okay? So that means that is freely available to you, to use in all different kinds of situations and circumstances, and use it.
And yet you don't want prayer to become acquisitive. You're only praying to ask.
Yeah,
for things.
absolutely.
Right?
No, that's true. But you are working in this world, right? And there is this whole force which is like a potential which is given to you. You need to collapse this potential. But it's true. When the minute you understand that the prayer is not the only variable, there are other variables, right? You will not only over rely on any one variable.
Right.
You see, it's automatic.
Right.
If I just pay attention to one and ignore all the others, it's not going to do the job. So that means, but you constantly use that variable which is a possibility, which we underuse otherwise. So therefore it's true that you can't be spending all 24 hours of your, sometimes it is not even that you have to spend like long time. It's quite amazing that now that I teach this Vedanta full time, how many people come and how many people call me, whenever they are going through whatever difficulty, with reference to anything that is happening in their life, they call me and they said, can you pray for me? And if I really, you're right, if I really think that I have to do one whole Rudram for them, I'll be spending my whole time. My teacher used to tell, when somebody has so much confidence in you, you have to do. You can't just, you can't just say yeah, and you put the phone down. Because in all these different things, what came to their mind is what? You. And the strength that you have. So you have to use it. And he says, even if you just really concentrate for 2 minutes and think about the well-being of that person, you still have to do it. You have to do it. Because in that time of difficulty, the fact that this person thought about you itself means a lot. And you have to play your part. But it doesn't mean that you spend all your time, because you physically cannot. But this is what also, it's amazing if you can also pray for somebody else. It's not only me, anybody who can pray for somebody else. There is such an expansion you can't believe. Because our general orientation is what? You're only interested in what? Your own well-being. And somebody who somebody else's well-being, either you're indifferent, or at times somebody else's well-being makes you smaller and you become jealous. Whether you recognize it or not, it just happens. How do you come out of that very subtle thing that you you don't even want to acknowledge, but it happens, and it happens to everyone. It's not only you're nobody. That jealousy and envy is something which is just all pervasive. But how do you come out of it? You can come out of it by some understanding that what your well-being is not just protecting your well-being against that other person. It is what that person's well-being also can indirectly lead to your own well-being. Because we are connected through this Indra's net. The minute you can say that my well-being is not just protecting myself, but it is using my free will and asking for well-being of somebody else, there is an expansion. There is an expansion. Sorry? It is not a zero-sum game. It leads to your own expansion. Whether that person will be helped or not, because it will add to that one variable, but it will lead to your expansion. That smallness, that preserving yourself, seeing somebody else as a threat, that whole drishti has to go. See yourself as a participant in this whole grand scheme of things. And everybody, the more you spread that bigness, that bigness will come back to you. That expansion is something which is necessary for people to understand and live Vedanta. Coming out of that, that smallness, it's very, very important. Any act that you do, dhanam. Dhanam is what? Giving. It's what? Self-expansion. What is our natural tendency? Hoard. Hoard for yourself. Self-interest, self-protection, grab. Okay? And this is how you're going to behave. To get out of that, what do you need to do? You have to start giving. There is a beautiful line in Samaveda. It says, Setus taraha dustaran. Setu is the bridge. He says you have to cross the bridge, which is difficult to cross. Danena adanam taraha. Adanam is not giving. That you have to cross. How do you cross not giving?
By giving.
By giving. The only way you cross is by giving. Okay? So that means then all these different, that you hate somebody, that you feel jealous. How do you cross?
Feel love.
You have
That's
to.
very unrealistic.
It's not. It's not.
Can't love
But
somebody you hate at that point.
so that means exactly. But how do you cross over that hate?
You can do some awareness in your brain. Like, for example, something that you taught us long ago is that you pull other people down because they threaten you or you feel smaller. So if you do it and then you look and see the reasons why you've done it actually, it gives you a foresight not to maybe do that again. That is also
Absolutely.
giving, not to
So
be
that means
harmful again.
absolutely. So that means every tendency of yours, right, has to be looked into. The false assumptions have to be corrected, and then what you just then you convert it. That conversion is important.
But then again, last time we talked about the prayashchit karma.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And yet, you can't be screwing people over on one side and then saying, I'm doing prayashchit karma so it balances up. my life."
Absolutely. So that means his prayers also. So you can't use it as, because see, that means you're creating new karmas and then you're kind of little bit neutralizing it.
Yeah.
But that is not, see what, that there are so many things that we may have done in the past, right? So we feel helpless. So there is some method where you can say that whatever vihitam avihitam va, something which are known to me and some things which are unknown to me, and please what neutralize. But that doesn't then what your free will, then it doesn't give you a kind of a license to abuse your free will. Obviously
That
not,
still
right?
has to remain
It is
aligned.
just, yeah, that still has to remain aligned. So that means you have all these different kinds of karmas which are what meant to help you, and not only help you but also what help, yeah, exactly. So that means use of free will and what understanding the laws of karma and dharma within which you work, and using the prayers, it gives you what it really causes, what that expansion, and that expansion ultimately results in lokasangraha. Lokasangraha means you don't just remain this little, your understanding of yourself is not just me versus the world. Okay, so that means you see there is this whole integration, and that will come. There is a whole verse on Bhagavad Gita which is coming on the, that yajna, that I will explain in detail, that how that whole expansion of Loka Sangraha, and Loka Sangraha also not from this whole thing that, oh, I'm so benevolent and I'm so great and I'm this big giver, and it's not with that, but re-understanding my position in the scheme of things. Okay, so that we will see.
So it's changing your definition of Amaka.
Huh? It is changing your very definition of Mamaka and encompassing the whole world. Okay.
After life is relationships.
Yeah. So you have to.
That, so the benefit of someone else is going to come.
Absolutely.
And also energetically. For example, if you use toxic language versus non-toxic language, that has to have an impact in your immediate environment. Forget about just, but the more you, that's also a way of giving it.
Absolutely.
You make that deliberate choice not to use the toxic language or
Even the
words like
thoughts or
hate
attitudes or
yeah.
interpretations and all, it's amazing.
That is also a contribution or a giving to a collective karma.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so this is, I will stop here. Setus taraha dustaran. Huh? Danena adanam taraha. Tara is cross.
Mamaka,
Mamaka is this mine. So this is where I was explaining, that for my Mamaka and Duryodhan Mamaka. Yeah. So this so this ends this 48th verse, which is Samatvam. Samatvam is from this understanding, and Samatvam is also by helping yourself through prayers, right? Now the next we will see chapter 3 verse 1, which is Arjuna is asking a question. So that we will see next time. Okay, Arjuna has a question and we'll see how he answers that. Chapter 3. This is page.
We're going to talk about prayer later, right? At some point.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, I've just told you there are different types of prayers. Now, there are structured prayers, which are, as I told you, Vedic rituals, then Vedic pujas, or any other religion, whatever they have, whatever structure they have. And then you have Vachika, which is all these chants, bhajans, or whatever. And my mental is this dhyanam. So these are all the different things. But in addition to that, you can just have whatever. I mean, these are, anytime you feel like asking for well-being of somebody or asking for clarity in that given situation, you are just feel free to create your own prayers, right? It is not like you have to work within a structure. Be creative, and in fact, the what you ask for, it really shows. Imagine somebody comes to you today and say, ask me for one thing that you want. It's difficult. So that means what it will reflect is what you understand in life. It's not an easy thing. So even to figure out what is important to me, that itself is a big thing, right? So therefore, this prayer is a tool to even to get to know ourselves. What are our priorities? What do I want in life? What is important to me?
Last night I was having a conversation with my younger son. I put him to bed. I was saying, I haven't seen you pray for a long time. Usually he just says some prayers. And I said, the prayer is a channel for you to have conversations with God. And you don't only have to say the prayers. You can talk with God and say what you have
What
to
to
do.
sing.
And you can argue, you can fight, you can have a good laugh. He said, I'm always talking to God. I'm already there. Don't worry. Yes, I haven't said the prayers in a few days, but I'm always talking.
Wonderful.
So I said, okay, that's fine, but you also have to be able to listen for the answers that you might receive. Okay, I'll think about that.
So I will stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.